When I was younger, I used to take naps upstairs, but by the time I was 8 years old, I absolutely refused to go upstairs. The upstairs had two large closets, attics. They ran from one side of the upstairs all the way to the other side on both sides. It was essentially a crawl space that was maybe 30 feet long. It started one day when a friend and I went crawling from one side to the other with flashlights like kids normally do. Then I saw a girl sitting there in the corner, acting like she wanted to play with us. I know a lot of people say when they see a ghost, they aren't scared, just interested. Nope, I was beyond terrified. This girl looked normal, had blonde hair, a nice dress, and seemed friendly. I stayed silent, kept crawling behind my friend, and got out of the closet. I told him what I saw in there. He said he didn't see it, but felt like he didn't want to go back in. Then my parents would occasionally send me upstairs to get something, and when I would get up there, I would see the doors swing open as if they were trying to get me to come inside. I would lose toys and wouldn't be able to find them anywhere. Suddenly, my parents would be fishing Christmas presents out of the attic, and we would find some of my toys in there. I remember being 8 years old. My parents are asleep still in the morning, and I leashed up my dog to go take on the monster in the attic. My dog, usually up for anything, refused to go off the top step into the attic. My parents never believed me with all the weird things that happened in that house. I would get blamed for things that happened all over the house, leaving lights on, toys all over, things I knew I didn't do. Well, anyway, we moved out of there when I was about 10. Not a week passed before the new owners called us up and asked if the house was haunted. Their daughter slept upstairs. She said that she had been playing with a blonde-haired girl at night. My parents laughed at how crazy these new homeowners must be. To make an already long story short, the girl started appearing in other parts of the house for them. They kept in contact with us. They would look over while watching TV and see the girl sitting on their daughter's lap, etc. They looked up on the computer the past owners of the house, found an old dressmaker that lived there, and yep, a picture of the little girl wearing one of the ladies' dresses. About 10 years ago, my parents were leasing a large house while looking for a new home to purchase. I was living in California at the time and had come home to visit for a few weeks. The first night that I was there, something strange happened. I climbed into bed and felt a sharp object sticking me. I felt around under the sheets and, to my surprise, found an open, almost diaper-sized safety pin. I closed it and put it on the nightstand. I forgot about it and went about my business the next day. The next evening, however, I found the safety pin, now open again, hidden beneath the covers in my bed. Knowing quite well that no one in my family was a prankster, I was very perplexed. The next morning, I went into the kitchen and asked, okay, who's putting the pin in my bed? Everyone just looked at each other and said they didn't know what I was talking about. The way that my sister and parents looked at each other convinced me that something odd was going on. Then, reluctantly, they all began to tell me the strange events in the house. My father said that he would hear the front door open and close frequently, and would hear footsteps down the hall or up the wooden stairs, but no one was there. My mother would hear the door slam, and then a voice imitating my sister's would say, "I'm home," but she wasn't. My brother would hear the garage door open and close mysteriously during the night. Ghostly footsteps on the wooden stairs leading to his apartment over the garage were heard almost every night. My sister first realized the house was haunted when she heard the doors upstairs slamming open and shut at all hours of the night. She decided to move in with a friend as a result. My parents decided to investigate and started with having the neighbors over for dinner. The attorney and his wife confirmed that there had been a problem with the previous owners and their children. According to the dinner guests, the two small girls refused to stay upstairs in their bedrooms and were terrified of even going up there. Meanwhile, my brother discovered that the house was built on an old family cemetery. My parents finally had all they could take and decided to move when they observed objects moving by themselves and the ghostly voices became more frequent. As they were getting ready to leave, my father noticed a ring hanging on a nail right beside the door leading in from the garage. The ring had definitely not been there just a few minutes before. It had a black star sapphire with diamonds in the shape of a crescent. He swears that it was left there by the ghost. My husband now wears the ghost ring. We had it appraised. It was made at the turn of the century from 18 or 20 karat gold, but bears no stamp as such. The diamonds are real and the sapphire is of high quality, resulting in an approximate worth of $1,200. What a wonderful gift from beyond. Me and my older sister had moved into the flat during the winter a little before Christmas and were very excited as it was our first experience in our own place. We had stayed there one night already, so the next night we decided to start to decorate the way we like. I moved all the furniture and got the paint ready. It was around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it was dark, with it being winter. There was a large window in the front room. Our view was the back of a graveyard, not a very pretty sight. All of a sudden, I looked at my sister, and she was staring through the window with a look of shock on her face, unable to speak. I looked at what she was looking at, and I truly felt sick to my stomach. It was a man who seemed to be bobbing around outside our window, face porcelain white with a bald head, but wasn't looking at us, just around the room, eyes black inside, unhuman-like. We screamed and ran out the back of the flat. At first, it didn't occur to us that this could be a ghost. We just thought it was a man trying to break in. We took a further look outside where he was. When we got inside and went around the front where he was, he'd gone. The strange thing is that our front window was at least 8 feet from the ground. Nobody could reach that standing up. We went back inside. That night, I must have suspected something as I slept in my sister's room. We were woken up at around 5:20 in the morning to the most horrible scream I'd heard in my life. It dragged on and sounded in pain. Well, we jumped up from the bed, ran straight out the front door. We haven't even been back to collect our stuff. The man who lived in the flat above us said he'd often heard screaming and strange things. He had 2 dogs, and he said that they would often chase something that wasn't there. Anyway, we decided to do some investigating on the flat, asking neighbors if anything had happened there. Most of the street seemed to know what had happened. 3 years before we moved in, a father and son lived in this flat. The son was 27 and had depression. He stabbed his father to death in the early hours of the morning before stabbing himself. But this had failed, so he threw himself out of the window. Nobody lives there now. It had been a brutal day at work, and all I wanted to do was come home, kick back, and enjoy a quiet evening. My roommates were on the night shift, so I figured I had the house to myself. Just me, a frozen pizza, and a cold beer. At least that's what I thought. The moment I walked in, something felt off. The TV was on, blaring away in the living room. I stood there for a second, trying to remember if I'd left it on that morning, but no, it wasn't me. Annoyed, I chalked it up to one of my roommates being careless. I muttered something about how they'd end up bankrupting us with the electric bill, then headed to the kitchen to grab a beer. That's when I saw it. The stove burner was still on. At that point, I was fuming. Leaving a burner on wasn't just careless, it was dangerous. I was already rehearsing the rant I'd give them when they got home. But as I turned off the burner and started cooking my pizza, the frustration faded. Maybe they were in a rush, maybe they'd just forgotten. It didn't matter. I was tired and ready to relax. I sank into the couch with my pizza and let the background noise of the TV drown out my thoughts. At some point, I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember was a loud thump coming from the balcony. Half asleep, I figured it was probably a stray cat or a raccoon rummaging around the lawn chairs we stood out there. I ignored it and dragged myself to bed. But I couldn't stay asleep. About an hour later, another thump woke me up. This time, it wasn't just annoying, it felt deliberate, like someone or something was trying to get my attention. Frustrated, I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a broom, and stormed towards the balcony. I was ready to chase off whatever was making the noise. When I stepped outside, the air felt heavier than usual, like the night was holding its breath. The balcony was empty, no animals, no sign of anything that could have caused the noise. I leaned over the railing, scanning the area below. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but no, there she was, standing just below my balcony. A woman. She was staring up at me, completely still, her face partially obscured by a strange fog. Her eyes, they weren't normal. They were blank, empty, like they were looking through me instead of at me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out, but somehow I managed to whisper, "Hello?" She didn't answer. She didn't even flinch. After what felt like forever, she slowly turned around and walked towards the trees at the edge of the yard. There was no sound, not even the crunch of leaves or the snap of a branch, just silence, and then she was gone. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Eventually, I locked the door and sat on the couch, staring at the TV I'd left on earlier. I couldn't bring myself to turn it off. It's been months, and I haven't seen her again, but I can't shake the feeling that she was inside the house before I got home, turning on the TV, leaving the burner on, almost like she wanted me to know she was there. I still don't know who or what she was, a ghost, a figment of my imagination. All I know is that night left me with a memory I'll never forget, and a lingering sense that she might one day come back. My husband and I own a martial arts school, and the building that it's in, which we also own, is about 130 years old, next to a church, and I never, and still don't, really, there has to be another explanation, believe in the paranormal, but the things that happened in it didn't just happen to me. It was decrepit, which was why it was so cheap to purchase, and we basically did all the work ourselves. Old, creaky, drafty, a bunch of things happened there. Here's one. One Saturday morning, my husband was on his computer in another room. I'm in the apartment, playing with a Tamagotchi app on my iPad, when I heard the stereo sitting in front of me click on, and a girl's voice started talking from it. I thought he controlled the stereo from his computer, so I ignored it because he often put on music to work out before class started. I do remember thinking, what kind of weird ass indie music is he listening to anyway? Because the voice just said, "Hi, my name is." I thought I heard Katie, but I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't paying attention. I have never known a Katie in my life. I am years old, I'm from, etc. I didn't catch the specifics because I wasn't really listening, but that went on for about 2 or 3 minutes until it suddenly went, "Something's hurting me," and when I caught that, I looked up and squinted at the stereo, like, what? Something's killing me. Something is killing me. At this point, the hair is standing on the back of my neck, and I'm getting up from the couch to take a closer look. Please, someone tell my parents. Tell the teachers. Tell the corrections officer. At the words correction officer, I just bolt into the other room and started yelling at my husband and cursing him out because I was certain he was playing a trick on me. I told him we don't effing play jokes about dead people, and he's of course looking at me like, what the F? When he finally calmed me down long enough to get what I heard out of me and what I was actually accusing him of, he told me it was impossible and led me to the stereo. It's not even plugged in. I thought maybe the stereo picked up the signals from an ebook or something. I lived in an old haunted house in college. Things got so weird that everyone moved out except for me and one roommate. I woke up at 3 a.m. because my roommate's door kept opening and slamming shut. From bed, I yelled for him to stop, only to realize I was the only one home that weekend. As soon as I yelled, the slamming stopped, but the hippie beads I had hanging outside my closed door began to sway perfectly, yet violently, against the doorframe for a half an hour. While I debated if I should pop out my air conditioning unit and jump out the window, I laid in the fetal position in bed until it stopped. I woke up at 3 a.m. alone again, hearing the Nintendo on the back porch playing loudly. I figured a drunk kid came in and started playing. I grabbed a bat and walked towards the back of the house as the music got louder and louder. As soon as I opened the door, it was completely quiet. Mind you, it was loud enough to wake me up. I had friends over and told them the house was haunted. No one believed me, so I asked the ghost to do anything to prove it was there. As soon as I asked, all the lights in the house began flickering for about a minute straight. This was the middle of the day. Everyone witnessed it. Almost everyone who stayed at my house had sleep paralysis at least once in that house. Every time something spooky would happen, the house would smell like old lady, flowery, strong perfume. This house had a door built into the floor that led to the basement. We always had a rug covering it up so no one knew it was there. Things would constantly go missing in the house and turn up in the basement. This house also had a coal chute from when it was heated by coal back in the day. Missing stuff would always be placed on the chute for us to come and get. Roommate had some issues too. Once, while playing video games late at night, he saw a mist kind of hovering from the kitchen and then moved to the bathroom. The bathroom had a trap door that led to the attic. That's where we figured the old lady ghost used to like to hang out. Roommate was up late. He went to go lock the doors and turn off lights. When he turned his back on the room and walked to the door, someone breathed into his ear, "Ha." He thought it was me. I was sleeping. He turned around and ran to his room. He was too afraid to come out and turn off the lights and the TV. Voices would wake us up in the middle of the night. I spent many mornings on the front porch, waiting for the sun to come up before I went back in the house. Coincidentally, I had a friend years later that rented from the same landlord, same town, different house, where he and all of his roommates moved out because that house was also haunted. I didn't think it was too weird until he was telling me that when all of the weird stuff happened, it was accompanied by old lady, flowery, stanky perfume. Also, a lot of people had sleep paralysis in that house as well. I have had many experiences with the spirit world since a very young age, and as I get older, my ability to see and hear other dimensional beings has developed dramatically. I was lucky enough to have grown up with an incredibly powerful psychic for a mother, and whenever I would see things, she would take the time to explain the workings of the spirit realm, and because of this, I have never truly feared anything that I have seen. The first experience I can remember happened when I was about 10. I saw a very clear light, pretty green aura around one of my mother's friends, and in front of the household of people, I asked about it. From that day forward, I have been able to see them clearly. About the same time in my life, I moved to Lincombe, Australia, with my father, stepmother, and younger brother, who was a toddler at the time. The house in which we lived was very old, having belonged to my great-grandparents, and was situated on the outer edges of Rookwood Cemetery, one of the oldest in the entire country. Many strange things would happen in this house, from me being thrown from my bed in the middle of the night on a regular basis while everyone in the house was sleeping, to my brother standing terrified in the hallway screaming at some unseen entity. Eventually, I moved back in with my mother, and with her, my abilities developed. She taught me the importance of protecting myself from the unseen dangers of all sorts, so I had no fear the first time my grandfather appeared to me. Since then, I have seen olden days couples walking down the main street of our town in bustling broad daylight, and they saw me, gentleman tipping his hat and greeting me a good day as we passed each other. I told my sister of this experience, and it was not long after that she experienced a similar situation. Another regular visitor, I believe he is with me constantly, is my son, who died at childbirth. It started with my sister, who had seen him clearly playing with her son, who was 1 year old at the time. Since then, he allows himself to be seen incredibly regularly and is not at all fussy who he shows himself to. He would have been 5 years old this October and is growing appropriately, even in the spirit realm. Another regular visitor is my former neighbor. She was another who was instrumental in developing my abilities, and we were very, very close. My whole family was devastated when we heard she was in the hospital and might not see the end of the day, so I made the rush over to the hospital to be with her. At 4 o'clock on the dot, as I was walking to the bus stop to go, she appeared to me strongly and said goodbye. The grief I felt was phenomenal, and I turned around to go home, to find my mother had only minutes beforehand left a message saying she had died at 4 o'clock on the dot. She is with me quite a bit and often passes on advice, attempting to lead me in the right direction. Maybe she knows that not a day goes by in which I don't miss her. This is not to say that all of my experiences have been loving or non-threatening. By no means is this the case. I regularly have a spirit of a vicious old man wake me when I am sleeping by poking me in the back. This poke is often quite hard, as if they are being done with a cane, and always a strong electric shock follows the poking. Another thing the old man does is put his face mere millimeters from mine and breathes rancid breath in my face until I wake up. Not a pleasant way to wake up, trust me. I have seemed to pick up a hitchhiker when I moved into my first flat, a dingy little hole that had been the site of a rather messy suicide. Not only does he wake me, however, but there are also times when he abuses me, and it is quite loud and clear. When I was pregnant with my son and staying with my father, I was awakened by the same apparition and called an expletive and had hands around my neck. Upbringing aside, that scared the hell out of me. I was up like a flash and went straight to my father's room and slept by the end of his bed. This did not stop the abuse, and in the morning my father asked me what the arguing was about the previous night and stated he heard the specific words that I had and thought it had to be the neighbors.